Welcome back to another episode of the Biz Magic Podcast, your place for all things tech in your online business with some solid hits of general biz chat too. My name is Patty Meyer, and I am the CEO and founder of Biz Magic, where my team and I support entrepreneurs who are overwhelmed by the back-end tech of their business. We create, implement, and teach the tweaks that help our clients make a bigger impact with less stress. Today, I'm really excited to talk with our guest because we're diving into a topic that I know that I need to better understand and that I have pretty much avoided in my business, which I know is not a good thing, and that is trademarks. So, whether you've been in business for years or you're just starting to build your brand, protecting what you're creating is a really crucial part of setting yourself up for a long-term success and protecting your assets. So today we're breaking it all down with a trademark attorney named Sarah Waldbuesser of Destination Legal. Sarah Waldbuesser Esquire is a trademark attorney and owner of Destination Legal and Twist Law. After several years at a law firm and a few career jumps, she ended up falling in love with online business and loves helping entrepreneurs achieve their dreams in a smart and protected way. She is also an adventurer, traveler, and food and wine lover. When not at her computer, she loves hanging with her two little kiddos, having wine with friends, flying around the globe, and connecting with other online business owners. In this conversation today, we're going to cover the basics of what a trademark is, when and how to file, common mistakes to avoid, and how to know whether DIYing it is enough or when it's time to bring in legal support. So this episode is packed with practical advice for pretty much any online business owner looking to protect their brand in a smart way. So let's get into it. All right. Welcome to the podcast, Sarah. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Can you start by telling me and the audience a little bit more about you? I know I read a little bit about from your bio, but I'd love to hear kind of in your words how you kind of got into doing this and just a little bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Sarah. I am a trademark attorney and I own two businesses. One is a trademark law firm, the other is a legal shop for online coaches, business owners, and service providers called Destination Legal. And I've been doing this for almost 10 years now. And, it is an interesting story because I didn't like being a lawyer. Like, I was a lawyer in Washington, D.C., I was miserable out of law school. I went right into a firm and I realized within 6 months that I was like, no corner office for me, no
Mm,
partner track for me. It was just not what I was interested in doing. So I had like a few career pivots and was in my supposed dream job where I got to travel a ton. Travel is a huge passion of mine. And I still wasn't happy. And I was just like, why aren't I happy? I really, I was single, now I have a husband and kids, but like at that time I was like, I just want to travel. So how can I work and travel? I started Googling and I found this podcast all about online businesses. And this was back in
mm,
2012 when this was just not even a thing yet.
yeah.
And I started listening it to on my commute from work to and from. And a few months into that, these two guys were like, "Hey, anyone want to come to an island on the Philippines and learn how to run an online business?" And I was like, "Sure, I want to."
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I quit my job, I cashed in my 401k and haven't been back to a 9 to 5 since. And it's interesting, like my first business was called the Bootstrap Lawyer and it didn't last long. I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't ready. Trying to run a virtual firm or legal business, that long ago, it wasn't a thing. It was so new. How are we doing this? We have licenses and state laws. Like, how are we going to make this work?
Right.
So I had a few pivots and had a drop ship store and I did, digital marketing consulting, things like that. But the more online business owners I met, at this point, I had achieved my dream of being a digital nomad. I was living in Thailand. The more people I met, once they found out I was an attorney, they were like, I need a contract. I need a privacy policy. I need a trademark. Can you help me? And so finally, almost 10 years ago, I just gave in and haven't looked back since. And I have actually loved it because it's not that I hated being a lawyer, it's that I hated being a lawyer at a law firm. I actually really love what I do now
Mm,
because I get to help mostly women who are bringing these businesses to, to life, and they are passionate for what they do. And I love helping them protect their passion, which is actually one of my trademarks, protect your passion, because,
mm,
I think legal is one of these things that is so scary for a lot of business owners when they're just starting out, and it doesn't need to be. And so I feel like it's my mission kind of to change the story around legal and not make it scary, but make it empowering. And, once you have legal in place and have your contracts and your trademarks, you feel confident and that you can really, just scale and grow your business from a really protected place. So it's really been an exciting journey to see, how the space has changed over the past many years, and definitely the legal space has changed. When I first started Destination Legal, the template shop, there was like one other template shop I saw from
mhm.
an attorney, and now there's dozens, which is great because 15 years ago, if you wanted a contract for your coaching business, you would have probably had to hire an attorney for $5,000 and they wouldn't even know what an online coach was. So
Right.
the fact that you can now buy a template written by an attorney for a couple $100 is really awesome. So that's kind of how we got here.
Yeah, that is so amazing. And it is something that is incredibly useful. And I know so many people who do exactly that. They go to lawyers' websites or like this template shops, and that's where they purchase a lot of their contracts because then they at least we know that it's okay and like okay, like if
Yeah,
we don't have the resources to hire a lawyer, we at least know okay, this has been created by a lawyer. So at the very least like my butt is
exactly.
basically covered, you know?
Yes, not created, by bot, no offense to AI, not created by, what I would call a Franken-Contract, which is when people try to piece them together
I don't know what
because
you're
it's just
talking
like
about. Never, ever.
because you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what
Yeah.
you don't know. So, it is nice to have that resource these days for sure.
Yeah. I love that Franken contract. I 100% have made Franken contracts early in my business
Yeah.
because again, we don't know. And I
Yeah.
started in 2017 and was trying to figure out to make contracts then. And it still wasn't a point with online business where online business really grew in more recent years. So even then it
Mhm.
was like, well, how do okay, well, I'm Googling contracts and online and I'm picking pieces. And so I love that there's a lot of options out there that are um, affordable, accessible, I think is maybe a better way to say that to people. And it feels a little less intimidating because I think that's another thing. Sometimes the idea of working with a lawyer can feel really intimidating in a lot of ways.
100%, 100%. And so that's why I love, you know, when people tell me that it's just like, oh, you're like a normal person and you don't sound like a lawyer. And I try, even my contracts, I try to make quite simple without all this legalese messiness that, I think some lawyers just, you know, think very highly of themselves. Not that I don't, but there's this air of whatever. I think
Mm,
that mostly exists in maybe the older male generation, but I think it's different these days. There's a lot of different looking lawyers, and I, for one, am glad to see the industry changing.
yeah, that's awesome. So as we talk about trademarking, can you kind of talk about the difference between what is a trademark versus copyright versus patent and like how do we understand what all of this actually means and what is relevant for our online businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So you just named the three types of intellectual property that exist in the world. And we can just cross out patents because it's very not relevant to us. 99.9% of us, right? So patents are a way to protect an invention that you make. So they have like utility patents and other kind of patents. This is like if you made a software or you made a new way to develop a straw or like something. I can't even talk about it because it's the most complicated area of law. Like
Mm,
patent attorneys are like engineers on the side, right? It's just like
interesting.
a whole different kind of brain.
Okay.
And, you know, typically not relevant to what we're doing. So we can just cross that off our list. But copyright and trademark very much are, and they're often confused because it's like which is which. So
Yeah.
I like to use, one way to remember is that copyright protects your content. So CC, copyright content.
Ah, okay.
Copyright protects blog posts that you write, pictures you take, signature courses, books, ebooks, songs, music, art, basically anything that you're creating and putting out into the world is automatically protected by copyright, which means we as a society have decided once someone makes something, it's theirs. Like I can't take it, I can't steal it, I can't resell it, I can't slap my name on it, all of that. Now we know that people do still, unfortunately, steal content and copyright and things, especially on the wild, wild west of the internet, but they're
Yeah.
really not supposed to. So
Right.
if somebody does take your content, you can send them a cease and desist letter for copyright infringement. You can go to the website, ask them to take it down. You can also register your copyright with the government. And what that does is give you the extra step of being able to sue for copyright infringement if someone does steal your stuff. But, unlike trademark, which I definitely think is a really important business step, I only think registering copyright is necessary if you meet two criteria. One is your content is in final form. So your course is done, it's not changing at all. Your
Mhm.
book is done, it's not changing at all. Because if you register the copyright and then add a chapter, it's nullified basically. And so
Oh,
that's why not everyone should do it because we're all updating courses and content all the time. And then number two, would you actually sue someone for copyright infringement, right?
right.
Are you actually
Right.
going to take that step? Now, if your whole business is a signature course and you are running it and that's your livelihood, then maybe you would. Like maybe you would take the steps to do that because what's nice about copyright infringement is damages are automatic. So if you can prove someone took your course, changed the name, and is selling it, then you automatically will get money from, the court will reward you damages. Now, the thing that's tricky about copyright is it does have to be like exact, like 98% same.
Mhm.
So if they take your course and just like steal the outline and then create their own, no dice, right? It has to be like the exact same. So that's why it's,
Yeah.
often not worth it. And, I think when it comes to content, we just have to do our best to create our own. And, now we're getting into a very strange world with AI and copyright and content and all of that. And it's still rapidly developing. The law is always behind technology. So there's cases right now figuring out what to do with AI content and that kind of thing under
Mhm.
copyright law. As of now, if you create something on AI and don't make any changes, like you don't own it.
Right.
Copyright is only if a human actually creates it. So then the question is, well, what if you change it a little bit and how much do you need to change? And so all of that is being worked out in the
Oh my
courts.
gosh,
Stay
how
tuned.
messy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super messy. Um, so that's content. It's just good to be aware of that. Or that's copyright. And so one thing to just keep in mind is that because copyright is automatic, you need to be really careful about, this isn't so much an issue now, but using other people's images. Like if someone has registered the copyright for their image and you use it without, you can have a copyright infringement claim end up on your doorstep. So just when you're using stock photos and licenses, just give it a read, make sure you have the right permissions to do so because in this case, ignorance of the law is no excuse, as we say. If you're like, well, my VA gave me that photo, I didn't know, like, sorry, you're
Right.
you're
Right.
still to blame.
You're
So
responsible. Yeah, it's your
yeah, something to
responsibility.
be aware of. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
so that's copyright. And so then trademark is what protects our brands, our brand names, our logos, our slogans. And so registering a trademark allows you to own your brand. So typically in the online space, that means owning your brand name, your podcast name, signature course name, coaching package, service package, whatever you're selling, you do have to be selling goods and services in order to register a trademark. So it can't just be like my free Facebook group or this phrase I like to
Mhm.
use a lot. It actually does have to be
Right.
tied to something that you're selling.
Mm.
And again, it allows you to own your brand, and they exist so that people in the marketplace can distinguish who's making what goods and services. So when I walk down the street with a white cup and a green circle, like, I was at Starbucks. It would be problematic if Dunkin' and Starbucks both had a white cup with green. Like, how would I know
Yeah.
what I was getting? And so that's why trademarks kind of exist. So to avoid confusion between consumers. And there's, 45 different classes of goods or services that exist. So most of ours in the online space is education, but then, you have clothing and you have books and audios and, journals and e-commerce and legal and accounting and all of this stuff. And you can have the same trademark in two different classes. So a good example is like we have Dove chocolate and we have Dove soap. Those are both trademarked.
Ah.
But it's okay because if I'm like, I just had the best piece of Dove after lunch, like,
You're not chugging body
hopefully
wash.
that I was not eating soap, right? Like then we have a problem. So you can have two trademarks that exist as
Mhm.
long as they're in different classes that wouldn't cause confusion. If I'm registering something in health coaching and there's a competing one in business coaching, that's like a finer line where that's really up to the trademark office. And trademark law is quite a gray area because the United States Patent and Trademark Office is staffed by individual attorneys who, if
Mhm.
one is having a bad day, they might decide that your trademark is conflicting with another one, even if the next day they might not. It's not quite that bad, but there are times where you're
Right.
like, what is this person thinking? So that's why, it's often you want to be working with an attorney that can kind of help you maneuver the path through that process.
Yeah. Okay. So at what point in somebody's business is it beneficial to move towards getting something trademarked? And what is a trigger for that? Like, okay, I've had this course, or like in my case, right? So I've got my business, I've got my podcast, I have things that I do. Like, at what point along the way should I have, or should I
Yeah.
potentially start thinking about trademark?
Yeah, so you can trademark at any time in your business, even before you're selling something. Some people trademark to reserve the name for future use, called intent to
Mm,
use. It's a different type of application. The Kardashians do this all the time. They have like 800 trademarks for things they hope to sell in the next 3 to 5 years, right? Some people want to go ahead and trademark a name, or they even hit market to make sure that they own it and have the trademark. So Sarah Blakely, filed the application for Sneaks a year and a half before she ever went to market. So you can do it anytime, but I think the actual real reason is way more emotional. And so there's really two kind of tests. Like one is, are you putting a lot of time, money, energy into this name? Right? So that's one.
right.
And then two, maybe the more powerful one is something I call the gut punch test. So if we're talking about biz magic, you have it in your mind. If you got a cease and desist letter in your email box tomorrow that said you had 10 days to rebrand your
Right.
entire business,
Ouch.
how would you feel? If you get
Yeah.
a gut punch, it's time to trademark, right? It's an emotional, like, oh my God, I've
Mm,
invested years in this. Like,
yeah.
yes, I want to own it so that nobody else can. And
Right.
if you're like, oh well, I was thinking about a rebrand anyway, then it's not. And so
Right.
I think
Right.
the gut punch test is really the most powerful.
Mm,
It's really about how important is this name to you? You
right.
know, in my own story, like I trademarked protect your passion even before I trademarked destination legal because I was more emotionally attached to protect your passion. I was like, I love this, I want this name. And then eventually I did destination legal as well, but it was like I wasn't as emotionally attached. So I think, it's just not owning a trademark is like building a house on land you don't own. It could be taken at any time. So trademarks are really an offensive move because not only is it like I own my brand, but that means nobody else can. And
Yeah.
so as long as you don't own it, there's always that little fear of getting that cease and desist in your inbox and having to rebrand in the next 2 weeks. And it happens. I've seen it happen. It's really an unfortunate scenario. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how to think about, is it time? Any time is fine. And I think it's the time when you get, either really emotionally attached to the name or when you're putting a good amount of marketing and branding and energetic dollars into it.
Yeah, yeah. So what does it look like? So when I hear about trademarking, I hear that it's thousands of dollars and takes and can take years. So what realistically, and that may be accurate. So what does it look like when we look at sort of the time and the financial investment in trademarking in your business?
Yeah. So that actually is pretty true. So it can take up to, I'd say, 8 to 12 months if there aren't any issues. So it didn't used to take that long. Ever since COVID and the online business boom, like it's taking a lot longer because they've been flooded with more applications, and I don't think they have enough attorneys reviewing them. So it definitely can take 8 to 12 months, and that's on a good day. If you run into an issue, if there's an office action, which basically means they're refusing the mark initially and you need to fight it, because they found confusion or they didn't like the specimen you submitted or your class description was wrong, for all of that, then you submit legal arguments. That's a step that an attorney has to do. And sometimes you win those and sometimes you don't, but having those delays a while. And so that could mean it's more like 18 months. I
Right.
have one I'm working on now that we've been doing for 4 years because it
Wow.
was suspended because
Mhm.
there was another prior mark that they were working through. So even though it can take that long, the date of filing the application starts your legal protection. So, like if I file tomorrow and you file 3 days from now, USPTO won't even look at yours until mine is processed. So, you can have some reassurance that once the application is filed, your legal protection starts. As far as investment, it can really range. So you have some, you can hire an attorney around 1,000 to 1,500, up to 5,000, 7,500, right? And so it really depends on the attorney and the package and what's included. And so some of those on the cheaper end, would maybe file your application, but then not do anything else. So they wouldn't respond to office actions. They just kind of leave it. This is what LegalZoom does. They just leave it. And anything extra, they're stacking on fees right now. So like, at Twist Law, my firm, we have a full service trademark package. It's 2,500. That includes everything. So it includes the class fee from USPTO. It includes any and all office actions, everything from start to finish. And so, when you're thinking about this process, you just want to kind of research, make sure to kind of ask those questions. Well, what's included in the package? And what if, we do get an office action and there's two different kinds of office actions? One is easy to address and one's more complicated. And so some attorneys will include the easy one, but not the complicated one. And then they rack
Mm.
on an extra fee for that. So that's just something to keep in mind. But again, it can range. And then, if you're using a top 10 law firm in New York City, you're probably looking at 10 to 20K for one
Right.
trademark. Yeah.
Right. And each trademark is its own thing. So, right, if I were doing, I'm just using BizMagic as an
Yeah.
example. This isn't like a one-on-one session. But
Yeah.
like if, I was doing BizMagic the business and then BizMagic the podcast, those are two separate trademarks, right? That would go into two separate trademark packages.
No. So
Oh,
that would be one
okay.
because it's the same name. And so that would be one class of goods or services. So,
Mm.
you would be in the education class, which would cover your services, podcast, it covers courses, membership, coaching. So
Ah.
all of that is in the education and entertainment class. So that's one trademark, one class fee. Now, if you're like, I have my podcast and services, and then I'm also selling t-shirts, that's an additional class.
Mm.
So an additional class fee of another $350, but it's still the same application. So
I
you wouldn't have
see.
to like separate that out. Now, if you
Okay.
had, Biz Magic and then Personal Magic, that's a different name. So that would be a separate
Right.
application.
So is it like everything that falls underneath? And so let's say, for example, right, a lot of businesses have like their business, but then they have like a signature course, right? Is the signature course because it's under that business count, or is that its own trademark because it's its own name and that sort of thing?
So if it's the same name, so like if my business name is Destination Legal and then I have an online course called Destination Legal, that would all be one class, again, education. So that would be one application.
Right.
But if it was like I had Destination Legal as my business and then my course was like, Destination Trademark or something, that would be a separate application. Is
Okay.
that the question you're
Yes,
asking?
that's
Yeah.
exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make it clear for everyone of like, okay, when we say it's all under that umbrella, but like
Yeah.
there are things because I've seen people say, okay, oh, I've got a new program or a new course, so I've trademarked that because they have a bunch of
Yeah.
trademarks that fall in their business because they're different things.
Yeah. And so, the caveat I think I see sometimes with clients is like, I have Destination Legal course, and then I have the Destination Legal Mastermind, and then I have the Destination Legal Template Shop. Do those all need to be different? They could be, but no, because what you could do is just say Destination Legal, trademark, Mastermind, course, and those
Mhm.
words, course, Mastermind, Academy, don't significantly change the trademark, so you're protected. If I
Yeah,
have Destination Legal and you come in and try to trademark Destination Legal Mastermind, it wouldn't fly because Mastermind is not a word that's going to change the word enough to cause it to look like an entirely different trademark.
got it. Got it. Okay. So, can you talk through like what types of things, like what does that process look like, right? If we're hiring somebody, what does that process look like when we're trademarking? What kind of information do we need to have? What do we need to really think about to be prepared so that we have it move as fast as they will allow it to move, right, on
Yeah,
our
yeah.
end?
So whenever whether you decide to trademark or not, whenever you're naming your business or podcast or program or services, you want to do a little due diligence on your own first, just to make sure that you're not diving in when you know another business has the registered trademark. So first step is just to Google it, like see who else is using it, see how they're using it. If you Google it and see someone in your same industry with the R with the circle, that's a big red flag. If someone came to me the other day, they're doing health coaching in Nevada and they found a restaurant in Texas that was the same. And I was like, do not worry, that's not an
Right,
issue, right?
right.
And so you just want to see, kind of get an idea how it's being used. Go to social media again, just see like, is the handle available? Is someone using it a certain way? You can also go to uspto.gov. They have a free search engine where you can type in the name and see what other pending or, applications or registered trademarks are out there. Now, I caution people because USPTO doesn't just look for exact matches. It's also, is there a likelihood of confusion? Meaning, is it backwards and forwards? Does it look the same? Does it sound the same? It's not just that black and white of like, oh, there's nothing with the exact same thing, so I'm in the clear. And that's
Right.
when having an attorney is very useful in this process. So, you know, making sure from the beginning that there isn't going to be a conflicting mark. And so the way that we do this is we do a really comprehensive search of all pending registered trademarks, making sure there's no issues, and then we actually give our clients a scale based on our research, a legal opinion of whether this is going to be successful. And I, do something very complicated with a stoplight, right? It's just red, yellow, green. If I do the search and it looks okay, we're green light, we're good to go. In all likelihood, this trademark will be granted. If I find a few, potential issues, like there's another registered mark, it's not in the same class, but it's similar, and this word is a little bit different, we're like at a yellow. And so at that point, it's up to the business owner to decide the risk that they want to take or
Mhm.
not.
Yeah.
Some people are like, yellow, like, let's go for it, because we can always argue, why it's different. But if there are two significant issues, if there's an exact match or too similar and it's a red, I'm not filing. I'm not wasting your money. I'm not wasting your time or my time. If there's no chance, we're not going to do it. And at that point, I work with clients. How can we slightly modify the name? Can we add
Mhm.
another word? Like, how can we distinguish between it to make it go from a red to a yellow or a green? And so when you apply, you have to show how you're using it in the marketplace. So, if you are doing a podcast, you have to show the podcast on Spotify. If you are doing a coaching package, we need to submit a snapshot of your coaching package. Basically, what they're looking for is this out in the marketplace? Podcasts, like, people can advertise on them. They're doing marketing for you for a coaching package. Can someone buy it? Can someone talk to you about it? That kind of thing. So you submit that evidence. And then another big piece is working through the class description, which we've talked a little bit about. What are you selling now? What are you planning to sell potentially if you're doing intent to use? How are we describing this? And that can be really important because you want to be as broad so you get the most protection, but also narrow enough that USPTO isn't like, you're saying you're doing this, but really you're only doing this. So it's kind of like a fine
Mm.
line to get the best protection that you can. And, you have to describe your class in a certain way. There's a whole system that they use of wording, and they can be so nitpicky. Like, sometimes they come back with these things and it's like, this is, you used the word consider in here and you should, like, crazy stuff.
Wow.
So, once your specimen, your class description, and then basic business information is all that you need. So whether, you can own a trademark as a sole proprietor, you can own a trademark as an LLC, or a corp, depending on what your business entity is. And then, you file and then you just wait.
So a lot of it's waiting.
A lot of it is waiting. Once it's done, a lot of it is
Right.
waiting.
So when it comes to like, right, a lot of people out there, let's say they don't have the financial resources or they're just sort of like, I can do this by myself. Like realistically, what does it look like to do it on your own, to like DIY the process? Or are you like, really, it's worth it to have a lawyer do this? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I do think it's worth it to have a lawyer do
Right.
this. People certainly try. I think it's like over 60% of people that try on their own don't, they fail.
Hmm.
And what's hard for me to see is they fail, but they didn't have to.
Right.
Like, people will come to me like, I tried this on my own and this is what happened. And it's like, if you were an attorney, this would have been an easy fix, like easy fix. And so, this is like, I don't fix my own toilets. I can try, right? I
Right.
don't do my own
Right.
plumbing. I can try, but I didn't go to school for that, right? And so it's almost like one of those things where it's like, stay in your own lane. This isn't your area.
Right.
So you can certainly try to do the initial application and hope for the best. People do succeed, but if you get an office action, you will not be able to respond to that without a legal education. It's basically you're writing a legal brief, you're citing case law, you're making these arguments, like,
Right. Right.
so at that point you would have to hire an attorney if you wanted to continue on the process. So,
Yeah.
and some people have come to me at that point. They're like, I did it. This is what they said to me. Now I don't know what to do. Can I
Right.
hire you?
Right.
You know?
It's kind of like using your analogy of like you can watch a general YouTube video to fix the toilet and you can start, but as soon as you hit a problem, you're like, well, I don't know actually how to troubleshoot this at this point. I've reached the end of my ability based on these basic instructions.
Exactly. And it's like, at that point, what's going to cost you more, right? Like, the time that you put into that, then you have to pay a lawyer anyway. So it's that
Yeah.
kind of thing, it's not that the process is so difficult that you couldn't learn some things from a few videos. You certainly can. There's just certain nuances that
Yeah.
you wouldn't ever know unless you've been doing this for a long time and seen hundreds and hundreds of applications. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the answer I have, is it's like, you can try, but and then it's like, how important is it to you to have it and to own your brand?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, are there any, like, as people come to you or you hear stories anecdotally or anything like that, are there any common mistakes that you hear about entrepreneurs making when they're moving into trademarking anything in their business?
Well, I would say two. One is just waiting too long, because I have so many people come to me and they're like years later, and then someone just trademarked it like 6 months ago, right? So I would say waiting too long and then being really disappointed and upset. Or worse, like going through a huge rebrand, and then deciding to trademark, realizing that it's actually already taken and you can't use it. And so
Yeah.
then you're like forced into a rebrand. And so that's no fun.
Yeah.
The other is, and I'm guilty of this, is once trademarking is kind of fun. Once you start to own your name, you're like, oh, well, I want to own this and I want to do that. Like, I think I'm on my like fifth right now. And, one of them, like, I never did anything with it. And so it's like, I do have clients that like get a little trigger happy and then don't end up using the trademark. And so at that point, it is kind
Mm.
of a waste. So I would just like, you want to, be certain that this is something that's going to be used in your business at least for the next 3, 5, 7 years.
Yeah. And so what are the costs, like if you're doing it by yourself, what is the cost to actually file a trademark? Because I mean, if you're doing, five trademarks, assuming, I mean, you could be rolling in thousands of dollars all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
but like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So the cost to actually file the application is based on the number of classes. And so each class is $350. So if you're just doing one class, it's $350. If you're doing two, 700 and so on and so forth. And so that is if it's an initial normal application. If you're filing an intent to use, which means you're reserving the name, you have the initial fee, and then there's another smaller fee when you decide to file what's called a statement of use, which means you're now using it. And so then you
Mm.
have to file that before it will register, or this is getting a little bit complicated, but you can file a series of extensions and all those have fees as well. So it really depends on which type of application and then how many classes that you have.
Yeah. So when you're looking for a trademark lawyer, you mentioned really pay attention to their packages, pay attention to, what's included in that. What else do we need to be thinking about before we hire somebody? Like I know in certain cases you need to make sure that they can practice in certain states and things like that. Is that true with trademarking or what are the things we need to look at?
Yeah, great question. So it's not true with trademark because it's federal. So you can hire an attorney from any state, they can be in any state. So like I'm actually licensed in Washington D.C. I currently live in Wisconsin, but last year I was living in Thailand, right? So it's like
Right.
it's that's one reason that it makes having a virtual trademark practice so great is that there aren't any state issues. What I would really look at is this their primary occupation? So I've seen lawyers that are trademark lawyers, real estate lawyers, criminal defense lawyers, like
Right.
all of them. And so I think you want someone that really focuses on this area. So just someone whose primary practice is like business and trademark law. And then, you're probably good. You might be like, who are your main clients, right? If I spend all my time, trademarking apparel and someone comes to me with a podcast, I'd probably be able to figure it out. But someone that's kind of in your space and industry works with a lot of those clients would probably know some of the nuances that might be needed to be aware of. So, I primarily do online, but I've done a restaurant. I just did a vodka brand. I've done solar lights, right? Like I've spun the gamut, but I'd say 80% of my clients are in the online space.
Okay. Got it. Um, this is super fascinating and super helpful. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you or tips or anything that you want to share that you haven't yet been able to share about this process?
Yeah, I mean, I think just keeping in mind that a trademark is an actual like business asset that you can sell, you can trade, you can buy, right? If
Mm.
you know, if selling your business is anywhere in your plan, like you need to have the trademark, right? Like a buyer, that's the first thing the buyer is going to be like, is this trademark? Do we own this? So, I would just to keep that in mind. And then, a trademark is never guaranteed. I can't guarantee it, and another attorney can't guarantee it. So, doing a lot of these steps early on in the process, making sure it's available and there aren't any, real issues can help save you time and money. I've seen people file for clear trademarks where there's already a registered trademark the exact same and they just didn't know to look, right? And so just making sure, I think listening to this, you probably have a few things on your list to do now in your own business to make sure that you're doing. And so you're going to be ahead of the game in certain aspects for sure.
Yeah, I love it. That's so great. So, because I'm a tech person and I love tech, do you have, and it can be related to your trademark work or not, but do you have a favorite tool that you use in your business?
Gosh, I mean, this is gonna be so cliche, but right now I'm kind of loving ChatGPT. I'm not gonna lie.
You
I
know?
mean, it's been really an interesting learning process. Otherwise, I did just make the switch to a Go High Level platform, where is previously I had been on many, many others, stringing them all together.
Yeah.
So it has been nice to kind of be more streamlined, which I know isn't a fit for everyone, but I've trying to simplify things in my life, and that has helped.
Yeah, that's great. For some people, it's great. It's a
Yeah,
great option. Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been so amazing. If anybody wants to work with you to trademark their business, or business name or anything in their business, or to follow you or anything like that, tell us how we can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So twistlaw.co is my trademark law firm. You can find me on Instagram at Sarah Waldbuesser. And then if you're interested in any of the legal contract templates or bundles that we have, that's at destinationlegal.com.
Awesome. And I will share all of this in the show notes as well. And this was so awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Biz Magic Podcast. Like most small businesses and podcasts, we rely heavily on word of mouth. So if you like what you heard today or in any episode, please share with your friends and colleagues and rate, subscribe, and comment on your favorite podcast platform. Till next time, cheers to your magical biz success.